have a guest today, Danielle Paige. Welcome, Danielle. Danielle, sorry.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And before we go into the conversation, I have to do the official introduction, and then we'll continue our conversation. So Danielle Paige is an international spiritual teacher, consciousness guide, soul astrologer, host of Cosmic Body podcast, and founder of Soul Link, Astrology Mystery School levels 1 to 3, and several other courses. A self-taught astrologer who's been reading the stars for lifetimes. She continued her studies with some of the world's top astrologers. She then devoted herself to learning different types of healing to create her own style of spiritual medicine. By fusing astrology, energetic healing, and intuition, she's able to help her clients heal their wounds, clear old patterns, and help them come back home to their heart. Danielle has given talks on mysticism and astrology at Scorpius Mykonos, Glossier headquarters in New York City, Soho House, the assemblage, the Good Fasts, and has traveled to over 32 countries, bringing women as well as 3 retreats, bringing women together while leading retreats in Hawaii, Costa Rica, as well as 3 retreats on the Greek islands of Mykonos and Kinthos. Her work has been featured in Vogue, Netherlands, twice, Goop, Astrology.com, London Standard, Goss Magazine, the Numinous, Thought Catalog, J-Date, CBS Radio, and more. So welcome again, and I'm so sorry for being a little bit rubbish at reading today, but I think my throat doesn't listen to me today. But I want to ask the question which probably was the first one that came to my mind when I was introducing myself with your work. How do you become a self-taught astrologer? I think astrology is such an ancient and massive massive field that I can't imagine. I can barely imagine that there's this British boy who taught himself to read, but astrology seems like a completely different level. So if we could start, and I hope it will give our audience also a chance to get to know you a little bit better on a personal level before we start talking about the topic that we have announced, which is remembering who you are.
Yes, I'm so glad you asked. My story is pretty wild. So I share about my whole entire story because it's 2 episodes on my podcast, Cosmic Body Podcast, episode 1 and 2. I will give you the abbreviated version here. So when I always like to start with this because it kind of sets up the scene for people. I was an interior designer and architect. I did that. I went to grad school for 4.5 years, did a thesis in interior architecture, and I always loved design. But as I was working in Boston at the time, I just knew that it wasn't my thing. I just kept getting this feeling of I have to help people, and I didn't know what that meant at all. So I was about to turn 30, which is now 14 years ago. That's when my journey started. So I was about to turn 30. I was living with my boyfriend at the time in Boston, and so we went to Paris for my 30th birthday. And on my 30th birthday, he broke up with me. He dumped me in France. On my 30th birthday. So that kind of, yes, that was a real big turning point. So with that, after we went back home, I realized, I mean, there's so much to the story, but I'll just condense it. I realized that I wasn't happy at my job. I needed to quit my job. And at the time, everyone was like, where are you going to go? What other firm? And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I just need to quit. And I got the information. I got it. I went on a walk and I just got this download at the time, but I didn't know it was a download, like this intuition from spirit. It was time to go back to California. Mm-hmm. So, some other things happened. Then I ended up going back to California, moving in with my parents when I was 30, who I haven't lived with since I was 18. That was around 2009 when the economy tanked. So there were 0 design jobs. Everyone I knew was getting laid off. So now I'm living at home. Couldn't find a job, had no money, and crying about my breakup. So it wasn't, and I just turned 30. It wasn't exactly how I saw my life going. So in that process, about a month after that, I would say roughly, I started having dreams that would show me things in the dream, and then I would see it during the day. And that to me it felt very strange because I've never had an experience like this before. And that kept happening more and more. And then one night, I literally woke up and I saw a spirit in front of me. And I've never seen a spirit. I know you hear a lot of people, like a lot of mediums say, oh, I grew up, I saw spirits all during my childhood. Well, I never saw that because I was very scared. And so I sort of suppressed that. So that to me, I kind of thought I was losing my mind and I got scared. In this process, though, it was like something opened up, and what was opening up was my true essence. So I began to remember who I really was. And so in this process, I was very confused, but I felt very guided. I felt very loved. I felt very happy in ways that I haven't felt before, because what was happening, I was coming back to my heart and my soul. And so my soul was guiding me to meditate, to do all these things. So while that was happening and I was going through this awakening, like I said, there were no design jobs. So I ended up getting this temp job at this property management company, which they basically only come in the office when there's a problem. So I'm working in an office where people are yelling at me. I'm going through an awakening. I'm super sensitive. And I'm like, this is not the dream, right? But I knew I had to be, in hindsight, I had to be placed there because I ended up meeting this guy who was the IT guy in the office. We became friends. We went out to dinner one night. He was like, oh, do you want me to read your birth chart? And at that point, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a Taurus. I didn't know anything about astrology. Or so I thought. And so he ended up reading my chart. And this was so amazing to me because he knew things about me that were very private that I haven't shared. So he opened up something in me. And so what happened was that night I went home and I was so interested in this because I saw it was like psychology. It was about human behavior. It was understanding of the soul. And so then I went home, Googled everything I could about astrology, literally could not stop. I watched the sunrise and I was reading all this stuff. And then from that moment on, something in me clicked. And what happened is, again, I began to remember. So I started printing out my chart, reading and studying. I had things all over my room. I looked like a mad scientist. Like it literally was crazy, like Venus, Mars, like all these things and all the aspects and all the everything what it meant. And I started teaching myself this. And I did this for me in the beginning because at this point, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what was going on. Everything that I was working for just came crumbling down. So I'm like, well, maybe this can give me some insight. So then I started seeing my gifts, started seeing my talents. And through that process, I'm like, I have to do this for other people. And so that started my journey. And to be honest, astrology came so easy for me because I have done this many lifetimes. I've done this so many lifetimes. And so now I use astrology as a base, but we go into consciousness, we go into energy, we go into so many other things. I always say astrology is a tool and it's a beautiful tool, but it's not everything. I call it, and I joke with spirit that it was my gateway drug. It was like for me to step into this because I was very logical and I used to work with blueprints and floor plans. And now I worked with blueprints of people's soul, right? So my brain was very logical. It needed something to grab onto that was precise. And, it is exact when you understand astrology. So that's how I did it. I taught myself. I even took classes years ago in the beginning and I would know things and they would ask me, and the teacher would ask me how I knew that because we haven't gone over it yet. And I'm like, oh, spirit just told me. So then I realized I was starting to infuse my intuition with this gift that was already in my soul. And I just want to let people know, school was never easy for me. Like it was always hard. I was never excelling. I was bored. And so I always thought that things would come hard, but it's just, you're not doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And when I learned this and I learned this language of our soul, that's what it is. It was so easy to me.
So you mentioned that a little bit in your previous answer, but can you maybe specify what does it mean to remember who you are? Because I could kind of read between the lines already that you were doing something very different from what you're doing right now, and the 30 was this turning point.
So at 30, I was going through my Saturn return. So that's a lot of people might have heard about that. There was some other things going on in my chart, but a lot of people know about the Saturn return. When we turn 30, things change in our life. We step into who we're here to become. But what happened was, every job I've ever had before I turned 30, I hate it. I just did it, I did it to make money, but it didn't feel natural. It didn't feel right. I felt like I was putting on a costume and just going through the motions. And I thought there was something wrong with me. It's like, maybe I'm never going to be happy. Maybe there's something wrong with me. And so what happened when I went through this awakening, now I know, I didn't know at the time. And again, this was 14 years ago. So I have 14 years of conscious awareness of what happened during the process. But what was happening was my heart was opening and I was reconnecting with my soul. And the reason why we feel so lost and confused on this journey is because we are disconnected from our soul. And so as I was waking up to my true authentic self, I was connecting with my soul. And so I was remembering the true essence of who I am. And that's at the basis of my work. That's what I help people do, is to remember who they are, because, we come to earth, there's so many programs, like maybe our parents were scared with money, then we take that on, but that's not really the truth of who we are. Or maybe there was a religion that we were raised, but we feel another religion is, feels right to us, or spirituality, or whatever the case may be. To each their own, but you need to find what works for you. So this is about coming back and remembering who you are. And my soul, it's like my soul just turned online, and the communication and the clarity. And there was a lot of confusion for many years, which I'm never sugarcoating stuff. So I want to tell people, my 30s were very confusing, very hard. I was clearing the old personas. I was going through a lot of ego deaths, because the old Danielle had to die, pretty much the one that was moving through life, just as she was told. That part of me had to die, and then the true self had to come through. That's why I do say a lot of things, and I do share, and I am not afraid to speak my mind, because when you are connected to your soul, there's no fear with that. You're just speaking your mind, and other people don't need to agree, and that's okay. We're allowed to disagree. But when you speak from the truth of your heart, you're being your most authentic self.
Mm-hmm. So a natural question would be, when did you forget who you were, and when does it happen? Because I understand that you work with other people as well, and your journey may be a little unique compared to somebody else. So how does it happen? When does it happen?
Oh, I think from the moment I was born. From the moment I was born, we come into this realm, which is very dense. Earth is a very dense vibration. We have this thick veil that, because if we didn't have this veil, we would all be speaking telepathically. We would all be levitating. We all have these abilities to do these things, but Earth is a very dense vibration. We're in a third dimensional plane. And so we are moving to higher states of consciousness. But in this process, and like my parents, beautiful people, but, they didn't know what they were doing. They did the best they can. So they brought in their own stuff, right? And so we absorb our family's stuff. We absorb our family's trauma, and so I think from the moment I was born, I didn't know who I was. And I almost had to break off that veil and clear off. It was like an egg that needed to break. And that was my heart opening up more and more, because when your heart is open, you can connect with your soul. So even now I know, if I'm having trouble with things, or if I'm feeling disconnected or lonely or lost, then I stop what I'm doing and I go in and I connect with my heart. And it's like, where am I not listening to my soul? Where am I not connecting to my heart? And what has been taking me out of that? And I come back in, because if you don't connect, I always like to call it, if you're not locked and loaded, right, you're going to go through life searching and searching and searching, when we got to lock and load ourselves and then move from that space.
So what would be the signs that somebody's disconnected or doesn't know who they are?
Yeah. Well, there's so much going on, obviously, since 2020, we saw so much going on. And so I think there's a lot of, that was a really beautiful example of, we're all going to have different opinions on things, right? And if we can't accept someone else's opinion, and we can allow them and listen to them and hear why they are saying what they're saying, and respect other people's views, that is a big indication that we are not connected to our heart, and we're not connected to our soul, because we're getting programmed by what we think it should be, right? We're getting programmed by our fear. So that was one example. Or just as we move through life, and we feel lost all the time, we're depressed all the time, we're sad all the time, that's a clear indication that we need to go inward, and we need to connect, and we need to feel, so that we can release the density. And every human goes through this. It's a matter of not saying it'll never come up again, but it's saying, when it comes up, do I have the tools to know how to move through?
So how do people find you when they, and I'm not talking about logistically, but what kind of problem leads them to you?
Oh, everything. I joked even recently with like the book I'm writing, it's how to live on Earth. How to live at this point.
That sounds like a question asked by an alien.
And that's exactly where I'm going with this, because how are we, at the end of the day, we are all aliens, really. We are all not from here. And we don't have a manual of how to live life, being authentic, being our truest self, being in our heart and being aligned with our soul. So how to have more awareness, how to see from a higher perspective, how to clear emotions. I work all the time in my membership, almost every day I'm giving tips on how to process our emotions, how to clear our emotions, how to have from a higher point of view, how to live life, how to understand your soul, how to connect, how to hear spirit, really anything that you're not taught in school, I'm here to help you with.
Mm-hmm. So the opposite question would be, how do you know that somebody is connected?
Yeah. Well, the reality is we're all connected.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody that is not connected, I should say. So it's just a different, like a nuance with the word. But if we start with that and we say, okay, well, everyone is really truly connected. What it is our density, our trauma, our programs, our belief systems, and all the BS that we take on just from being on Earth. You can turn on the news, you can turn on whatever, and even if you're on TikTok all day long and you're like, oh, I need to look like this certain person, that's going to take you out of your authentic self, right? It's okay to say, oh, someone's beautiful, or I enjoy their gifts and their talents, but when we are trying to be someone that we're not, right, that takes us out of ourselves. So we all are connected. What I help people do is clear the density and clear the layers. And that means we might go through a dark night of the soul. That means we might have to spend a period where we're, not feeling great, because the reality is we need to process the emotions that sits in our field and clear it out. So the work is layered and leveled, but the ultimate is so that you can be your highest expression and you can be in joy. And no matter what is going on in the world, and especially these days, there's so much going on in the world all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, is that going to take you out? Because if what's going on in the world is taking you out, then how can you be of service to someone else? Like, the universe needs you at your highest and best so that you can help other people and you can serve other people.
Mm-hmm. Then I'll maybe specify this question in a little different words. You've mentioned being authentic, which is the word which I think a lot of us understand in some way or form. What does that mean in the context of your work?
Yeah. Honoring your soul, walking your path, even if it looks different. For example, I knew this was my path even in the beginning. I wasn't making money. I had maybe 1 or 2 clients in the beginning, which is clearly a very different story now. But I knew that in my truth, in my soul, in my bones, in my cells. And so you need to listen to that voice in your head, that voice in your body that's whispering to you where to go. So following your authentic path, even if it doesn't look like that of anyone else, right? That is your truth.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be a marriage, that can be marrying somebody that you never thought you would be with, whatever it is, but following your authentic truth, because that's your joy.
So a little bit more practical, maybe angle to that. So if you feel, like imagine you're back in your very beginning in the days when you only had a few clients. How do you know that what you hear in your heart or in your head is the true direction? Because there's a very fine line between being persistent and being just obstinate. Or for example, if your heart tells you that something very stable maybe is not the best thing for you, be it stable career with good salary or stable relationship with a decent person, how do you know that it is actually your soul talking and not some nonsense, number one, and number two, how do you find courage to follow that if you're in the beginning of listening to your heart and to connecting with the soul?
Yeah, beautiful question. And so I first want to start off with saying that this process is a journey. We live in a world where we want quick answers and we want, okay, what do I do? I'm not connected with my soul. Give me the steps. I'm going to do it right now. So I think that's really important to understand, is that this is a process of relearning and unlearning the belief system. So for me, this was my journey. And so things clicked very clearly, and it was a truth in my soul that I knew. But what I always tell people, one of the first things that you can do is I listened. I got quiet. I didn't listen to my family. I didn't tell friends what I was doing in the beginning, because I didn't want outside opinion. oftentimes we ask so many people because we don't trust ourselves. And I do think it's important to get guidance and get coaches, and absolutely, but there are times in our life when we have to sit with something and we have to ask ourselves. So one, I got very clear and I got very quiet and I listened to that. I listened to my soul. And from there, for me, having the courage, the way I felt and the way that I knew that there was something more for me versus at all the other jobs, I wasn't lit up. So what is lighting your heart on fire? And I was still going through a lot of changes, and it was hard and it was crying at times, but even underneath that, my heart still knew. So you have to trust your heart. And that's what, going back to what I just said, you have to give yourself time to develop the relationship with your soul. You know, just like when we meet someone new, we don't jump in and we assume that we know everything about their family and everything about how they're going to react in a situation, right? We have to get to know them. So we have to start building the relationship with our soul. So I think that's the most important thing, is we can't expect this to happen overnight. We have to understand that we have to quiet our mind. We have to listen. We have to trust, and we will be led. And sometimes it is not easy. Like I was led and I was still crying on the ground at times. And I was still very scared, because we are still human. It's not about, we're just ascended masters and we all get this guidance and we just go, 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 and everything falls into place. Things fall into place and we still have to move through our old emotional junk, really.
It's I find this analogy very very illustrative, that you have to get acquainted with your soul as if it's someone new you're meeting in your life, which is such an interesting idea. So in your bio and obviously in some of your answers, a lot of astrology is coming through. How does astrology help? How does that fit into the picture? How does it help to solve the problem?
Yeah, so I love astrology so much because, like I said, it was my first entry point into consciousness and awareness. When you understand your birth chart, it is truly the map of your soul. It can talk to you and show you, when you understand the rhythm and you understand the pulse of the energies that you were born under, you understand, oh, this is why maybe in love, okay, I have a tendency to do this. So when you see and understand that this is a shadow energy, and I definitely could have a tendency to do that, what's the higher aspect, what's the higher octave of it? So then you can learn, oh, okay, I have this. There are beautiful things about this alignment that I have, but that's the shadow energy. So let me move into the higher expression of it. It's about work, it's about career, it's about money, it's about purpose, it's about soul, it's about connection. I mean, there's so many beautiful things with it. So to me, this is a baseline of who you really are on a personality level, and then on a soul level, how you chose to express this energy and how you're moving through life. So like I said, I started it because I just wanted to understand who I was, because I didn't think I knew anymore after my awakening and after everything came crashing down. And I loved it so much, and I just never looked back.
I can see that we have Stephen here, but before I pass the microphone, I want to still finish up that conversation. So when you work with people, do you, is that the basis also of your work with every single person? Do you help them to get the, explain the chart, or is it something that you have to learn to understand about yourself, or you need guidance of a professional to explain your chart to you? How does it work with other people?
I always recommend people go to a professional astrologer that you trust, because there's a million beautiful astrologers out there. And then just like with any craft, there's people that are not of the highest good, right? So you have to find someone that you trust. It is a language, and it's not the easiest to read if you don't know. So I was doing chart readings for about 9 years straight. I did several a day for 9 years. And so now I moved away from that, since my purpose is more about the masses. And that's why I developed Astrology Mystery School, and I have level 1, 2, and 3. Because I teach you how to read your chart, how to interpret it. And then also you can read the chart of your partner, your child, your boss, right? Your best friend, your mom, your dad, your brother, sister, whoever, so that you can understand them better. So now I take people through, and it's not just astrology. My course, we go deep into, it's an awakening, really. You can read the testimonials, because you go through a journey of truly connecting with your soul and understanding who you are. So it's a beautiful, beautiful journey.
Stephen, I'm really sorry that I'm going to put you in this position, but I have to ask one more question, and then I promise I'll pass the microphone to you, and then you can retaliate and keep me suspended. But Danielle, so one more question I want to ask. Very often when a person is read, or when we're doing some tests and there's a typology assigned to you, it kind of also feels a little scary, as if you are going to now get those boundaries. I understand that you understand yourself a little better, but how do you deal with the feeling that, okay, that's now predetermined for me, or can you actually change things that you do not like?
Absolutely. And that's why it's very important. I have never in my life done a reading where somebody left and felt scared. If anything, they feel relieved, happy, open, and they feel like they can breathe for the first time. So that's why you have to make sure you're going to the right person, because there will be a lot of people that tell you scary stuff, but there's nothing scary in astrology. What it is a deeper understanding of your deeply ingrained behavioral patterns. So I can talk to you about something and you probably will identify with that. And then, oh yes, I can see that in my life, but there is no stuck. So what I like to explain to people is there's a lower octave and there's a higher octave of everything in the chart. And then within that, there's 50,000 shades of gray, and multiply that 50,000 shades of gray, times the quantum field, right? So we fall in that spectrum. So we're never going to be just here. We're never going to be just here. We're going to live life and go in this and going through the ups and downs, and we're going to move through life. So you're not stuck. Your soul chose these energies. There's nothing wrong with being a Gemini, being a Taurus, and then having your moon here and your Venus here. And what it is, these are all gifts that are going to help you do what you came here to do. And these are all special skills and talents, so someone in Aries is going to have a gift that someone that doesn't have that somewhere else. And so that's why the world is so beautiful. And we have all these artists and creators doing all these different things, because imagine if we were all the same, right? How boring would that be?
Especially if we were all perfect. But I do not know if Sagittarius is very good with discipline, but I'm going to discipline myself with will right now. And welcome, Stephen, to join the conversation and ask your question.
Hi.
Hi.
I think you actually asked part of it with the difference between astrology and astronomy, and how the reading of the charts can kind of because I've been working to try and clear some of that junk you were talking about, to get more in line with my soul, and try and figure out what kind of voices are leading me towards certain things, and how that kind of healing works with your methods, I guess would be the right word.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's beautiful that you're doing that. I think that's amazing. So thank you for doing the work as well. So what I always say is, and I said this in the beginning, astrology is beautiful. It gives you a baseline to understand who you are. But what I will always say is you can't, and astrology is complex, but I'm just going to break it down right now to let's just pretend we're looking at the sun sign. So if you're a sun in Gemini, and then there's a sun in Taurus, and then someone else is a sun in Aries, it doesn't mean that every single person is going to completely act the same. There are traits and characteristics with this, but this is why the work I do, I get deeper into your emotional field. I get deeper into clearing your personas and your beliefs. So astrology is absolutely beautiful. And then it can show you where you're stuck, and it can show you your shadows. But then we still have the nature and the nurture experience. We still have, our parents that imprinted this, and God bless them. We're not blaming anyone, but that's the reality of a lot of people's life, right? And just what we picked up from living life. So we then have to move a little bit beyond the chart at times, and then go into our emotional field and start clearing the energy, right? So I've created other courses for that. I have a membership for that, and to support people throughout the year by just staying in alignment with their soul. So I don't know if I answered your question. Please let me know if I didn't, and I will try to.
No, you did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen, for joining us. And I can see that today we have a lot of questions, and I'm very disciplined today. So Bianca, you could bring, you can keep bringing the people in as we are having the conversation. And I will ask, I was tempted to ask that before, and you have given a little bit of an answer to that. So what do you do with the things that you do not like about your reading, or you mentioned the shadow, I guess.
Yeah.
Although maybe somebody doesn't like not the shadow, but something else. I do not know.
Are you asking like, so if we're talking,
What do you do? What do you do if there are parts of your reading which you're just not comfortable with, or you would not like that to be there?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I look at, and I'm very realistic, I'm very to the point, and this is life. I think we have to understand that the more we say, oh, and disown a part of us and disown the shadow, we all have shit that we do. That's why I'm being serious. We all have shit that we do. We're all human beings. It's hard to be here, right? So we have to first cut ourselves a little slack. So I try to teach people to help them understand the more you're disowning and hating a part of yourself, the more you're going to play that out. And so it doesn't mean, like with relationships, when I was younger, I would create a lot of stories and believe that, they were the one when it wasn't. And I would create this fantasy. And once I realized I was doing that, I didn't shame myself or blame myself. I was just like, oh, wow, okay, I didn't realize I was doing that. And then I had compassion for myself. And then I can see that, that shadow energy, if I use it for the higher octave, it's actually channeling, it's actually connecting with spirit. So I was using the lower energy. So let me use the higher expression of that. And then we begin to love that, because if we truly hate any part of us, if we truly say we're going to disown any part of us, we're not whole. And the whole point of this is integration and oneness. Now, it doesn't mean we have to walk around with like love and light all day long and wherever we're happy all the time. No, we're realistic. We're human beings, but there is nothing scary about us. We all do stuff. We all have done stuff, and we're learning. We're doing the best we can. So it's first having compassion and switching the way that we look at things.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, it's a good answer. So we have Mariu here. I'm not sure if I pronounced it well, and we actually have also Raphael, but Raphael will have to wait a little bit. So
yes, hi.
Hi.
I'm so glad that I got on. I've been very blessed as a child with so many gifts, but somehow down the line, I've lost that connection. So I know what it feels to experience, that intense love, that like no doubt. And in my mind, it's like, even though I would just be guided, and I wouldn't question. But now it's like I lost it. And I would love to reconnect and know what I can do because I quiet my mind, and there's like so much interruptions.
Yeah. Oh,
if you know what I mean.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. So I want to remind you that let's just change it to, because you're saying you lost it, and I understand what you're saying, so I'm not discounting that.
I haven't lost it too. I still have, let's say I'm not at 100%. I would say I'm like at a 10%.
So that's beautiful. And so now it's just about reconnecting and remembering. And this is the thing, this is the non-glamorous part of the work in the world. Like someone could watch my Instagram and see if I'm posting a picture on the ocean and assume that it's all roses. The reality is the stuff that blocks us is our density, and our density is our emotions and our trauma. And every single person has gone through stuff and has emotional junk and trauma in their field. I don't care who you are. And so, and I still have it. I've cleared a lot, and I can pick up something tomorrow, right? So the point is we have to clear that old stuff that we're holding on to. Are we holding on to an old relationship? Did we get in a fight with someone? Did we not let it go? And the biggest thing is we can let go of it on a mental level. And I've done this a lot where I process on a mental level, but it's still in my field. And so this is where we need embodiment. And that's why my podcast and my membership is called Cosmic Body. It's about getting back into the body and moving the body, making noise, making sound, feeling, releasing, allowing yourself to cry and processing it out. And when we can process our emotions, we become lighter because we have space for light, and consciousness and energy is light. So we have to feel. So I would say to you, you have this, it's still there, it didn't go anywhere. So what do you need to process more? And I ask myself this every day. Just yesterday, I did a session with someone. I was crying, old boyfriend stuff, right? Crying, cleared out. And I'm like, whoo, I feel so good now and I feel light, right? So we have to do this constantly, right? So where do you still need to process some junk that you're holding on to? That's what I would ask yourself.
Okay, thank you so much.
So welcome.
Thank you, Marie, for joining us
Mhm.
and for asking your question. It is a very relevant question to a lot of grown-up people, I'm afraid. So thank you for
my moon
joining.
circles. We'll unzip you in a second. My moon circles are powerful.
So we have Raphael, I believe, joining us. Hi. I'll pass the microphone to you now.
So my question has to do with the ego deaths that you've mentioned, because I feel like about a year or so ago, I had one myself, but it ended up biting me in the ass, pardon my French. But I feel like there was that part of me that I kind of suppressed because I thought it was part of a spiritual evolution. But later on, I guess it didn't die, but it was just caged away. And yeah, so I don't. The question, I guess, would be, what did you really mean by ego death, and how does that really work?
Yeah. Well, I have a question for you, because you said it bit you in the ass, but like, how did it do that? Because is that still part of how we thought it should be a certain way? Because when we think it should be a certain way, we're still holding on to the belief, right? So the path of awakening is true surrender. That doesn't mean we sit on the couch all day and we just, think we can do one vision board and we create everything, but it is true surrender of how we thought it should look and should be and should feel, right? So that's kind of my first question for you. If you want to, I'm curious.
So I was trying to, because, well, I grew up with a lot of toxic masculinity, for example, and very patriarchal situation, so to say. And I was trying to actively suppress that part of me, those genuine thoughts, not genuine, sorry, but instinctive thoughts, that the first things that came to mind, but just because I was raised that certain way. And I also, in this process, embraced my bisexuality, which later on, I feel like that part, it feels very odd to say, but I feel like that part of me doesn't want to allow me to embrace my bisexuality, if that makes sense. Of course, it probably doesn't, because it's a lot more complicated.
I understand. And of course, it can get complicated because things get complicated when we're in the head. When we move into our heart, there's neutrality there and there's no polarity, right? So it only gets complicated. If you embraced what feels natural to you, then that's why I want to go back to, I had a feeling there's nothing that can bite you in the ass to say only people's opinions or what your ego thinks it should look like. Because if that's truly authentic to you, then that's why I keep going, I don't see how something could actually bite you in the ass. So I think there's still some ego beliefs and holding on to that. So where else do you need to let go of that? Because if that is your true authentic self of being bisexual, then that is freedom. And that's it, right? And then we drop it, I just have full body chills, and we drop into the heart and there's no questions and there's this. And of course, life is confusing and we'll figure things out as we go. But if that feels authentic to you, then where's the chaos with that?
Yeah, that's some food for thought.
I'd like
So,
to speak about that.
I'm sorry for trying to I'm not trying to repeat, I'm just trying to make sense of, does that mean that if you still feel resistance and uncertainty, that means that there are places still to let go of and the work is not done? Is that?
I mean, we can say, listen, we're perfect and whole the way we are, but we also at the same time, we're going to be doing work to the day we die, right? That's just where we're clearing stuff, we're picking stuff up, but that doesn't mean that we have to strive for perfection. Like, you have to understand we are perfect and beautiful now. You are worthy of the love you desire right now, even if you have shits, because we all have shits, right? That's a huge paradigm shift. And so it's a balance of this. So there's always going to be stuff to work on, and you are still perfect and whole and worthy right now, no matter what.
Raphael, if you want to ask a follow-up question or anything, you have a chance. Until you say you're done, you have the chance.
Honestly,
okay?
I don't know if I would be able to ask a follow-up question right now, because yeah.
Sure.
But
sure.
I'm grateful for what you have said, and that I need. Yeah. I need to sit with myself.
Message me on Instagram if you want. Send me a DM and we can just continue because I want to make sure that you're in a good place.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us, Bianca. We'll have to actually start limiting our guests soon because I don't think we'll have enough time. But we had, let me see, we had Melly waiting. So you're the next one to get the microphone. We don't have your voice, I'm afraid. Hello? Try again. No sound for now. If you don't mind, I'll pass the microphone to Cindy for now, and hopefully your sound comes back. Cindy?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, now. Every time I'm trying to...
You can hear me.
Now we can hear you. Okay, Cindy, we'll have to wait.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, thank you very much for allowing me to ask a question. So my question is about, you know, in astrology with house calculations, because some astrologers use some house calculations, some other ones, and the readings are very, very different. Whether you have your sun in the 7th house or the 1st house, what method do you like using? Which one do you use?
So beautiful question.
The one that you find most reliable.
Yeah, beautiful question. So if you want to watch a whole bunch of astrologers fight, I always joke, go to an astrology conference, get on stage and ask them what house system to use, right? And every astrologer is going to tell you the biggest thing. So here's the thing. At the end of the day, the house system is made up, all of them, okay? I learned with Placidus, which is the sort of the standard default system. Okay, that's how I started with. And then as I started growing and I started learning more, I started looking into whole sign house system. And I'll tell you, at first, I was like, no, there's no way, because my whole chart changed. And I was like, this is not who I am, right? Mm-hmm. I was before a 5th house sun, and I'm like, oh, I'm a 5th house sun. I'm not going to be a 6th house sun. Didn't want to do that, right? So then I went back, and then as I got older and matured and saw myself, and then saw clients, and then saw friends and knew them, I began to see that the whole sign house system, first of all, aligns with gene keys and human design, if people are familiar with that. It's the original house system. It was the original house system, like Mesopotamia, way back when, that they used to use. And I can see that this aligns with where we're going and more aligned with purpose. So then at point in my career, I switched, which was like an identity crisis for me and for some other people. And at the end of the day, astrologers might use a different one. But if you're going to an astrologer that is intuitive and is feeling stuff, sure, I might see your sun is in the 6th house here and moves to the 7th house, but there might be something else in the 7th house, or it might be something else with an archetype of that sign that kind of balances it out, you know, because we find things all over the chart, and then you can still get things intuitively. So it is a big decision to decide. I go with whole sign. That's what I love. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say one is right and one is wrong, because there's a million infinite possibilities with everything. These are just tools to use. And at the end of the day, it's the clarity and the channel of the reader, which is the most important. So hopefully that answered your question.
Oh, thank you very much. It does.
Okay. Thank you, Mary, for asking it, because I actually really appreciate you guys joining me in these conversations, because sometimes I can't even think of a question like that. So thank you for joining us. And I think I can see Danielle actually. I think you like this question.
Oh my God, I love it, because it's like an advanced astrology question. I'm like, this is great.
Isn't it? Right? So I'll keep doing that. But for now, we have Cindy. Cindy, you get to ask the question, and you might be the last one unless somebody insists on joining us.
Thank you very much, Cristina and Danielle. Thank you for the very interesting questions, Cristina and Danielle. Yes, I'm a big fan of following my soul and to listening my authentic self. And to be honest, my background is as a scientist. I used to be a scientist. Then I became a Reiki practitioner. And I know to evolve more as a practitioner, I need to really listen to my soul, to follow. And I'm trying to make a relationship. And I know something is there. The problem is, like, how do I build this relationship? How do I continue with a relationship? And how to recognize if I'm really listening to my soul? it's a lot of information. It's
Well, that's a really great question. And I think it's very practical because you're coming from a science background and most of humanity is coming from left brain linear. That's what we're just taught. That's what we're used to doing and being. And so then all of a sudden to build a relationship, it's more about the being, right? So the first thing I would say to you is because you have a scientist mind, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing, you're going to have to play with that kind of that personality and learn to soften it, because the scientist mind, even ask this question of how do I know? And it's almost like wanting steps to do. Yes. And it's looking, and I get it, because when I was going through my awakening, I asked one of my first teachers, I was like, just tell me what to do. I'll do it all. I'm so committed to my path. And she was like, oh, honey, like, I wish I could just give you a 10-step, but it's not. It's literally these moments with your soul in the middle of the night, right? So I get you and I feel you, right? So it's for you, you're going to be looking, your logical is going to be looking to make this big shift. Okay. I want to like see these fireworks right in front of me, then I'll know it's true. Right. So for you, it's dropping into the subtle body, dropping into the subtleness of, it's not about this huge shift, which could happen, but it's not about that. It's more of you surrendering, softening into your body and listening to the subtle whispers. So when we think the mind is here, or our heart mind is here, the mind is actually here, all around us, because we're picking up from the energy, we're picking up from people all around, we're picking up from God's mind, one mind, everything. So when we soften, I want to feel into the beingness instead of looking for the sign. Does that make sense? Feel into the beingness rather than looking for the flashing lights. Yeah. Because your logical wants the answer and your logical wants to figure it out. And so if your logical keeps looking and figuring and looking, you're going to bypass what's in front of you already. It's already here. You said you do Reiki? You're Reiki trained?
Yes.
So you're already doing it, but that logical mind is taking over. So talk to your logic mind. Thank you. You're so amazing. You're so smart. I'm so appreciative. Thank you for paying the bills. Thank you for, cooking the kids, like getting things organized. Thank you. And now let's soften and drop into the other part of me, which I haven't been connecting with as much. So these things are subtle things. And I know everyone wants like one answer to do this, but the reality is of this journey is it's not a TikTok dance. It's not something I could share on TikTok. It is the beingness and the feeling into the energy. Just notice that your mind wants the answer, but your body's already feeling it.
Can I expand on this? This subtle whispering, are we meant to listen, hearing it all the time? Is it, I know what you mean about getting into your subtle body. It's this peaceful moment that you're really connected. It's beautiful. I don't hear anything.
When I say hear, it doesn't mean like you're actually listening to my voice right now. And for some people, maybe. But when I say hear, it's that, like if right now, if I told you to think of a red Ferrari, I don't know, I'm just thinking, right? Well, okay, red Corvette, Ferrari, any sports car, right? You can picture it. It's that same kind of energy that it's so subtle that we pass it up all day. So to answer your question, yeah, spirit's communicating with us all day because we are spirit. We are literally source embodied in this consciousness right now. So there is no lack of connection. We just can't hear it with our own density, with our own emotions, with our own bullshit, with our own trauma, right? We all have, and there's no shame. Every single person has that. Like I said just yesterday, I had to cry and clear out some shit, right? That's what we do. But we do that so that we become lighter. I think you're going to have a shift after this, and you're going to feel it's just a matter of feeling, because your logical mind is looking first. So think your logical mind and then just drop in and let it go.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I can I guess you had some people in the background, but thank you so much for your wonderful questions. And unfortunately, our time is coming to an end. So I do want to ask a question, which is maybe also a little bit more of a simple question. But let's say for people who have been listening and who will listen later when its recording is published. What could you leave them with if they don't go the the way that most of your students would go, where they come, you look at their cosmic chart and so on and so on. What would be the advice that you would give to the humanity? Like if you couldn't give them a 1 hour lecture, but something.
So what I would tell them is what I do right now, because like I said, I moved away from doing chart readings because I want people to be able to access all this for themselves. So what I would tell you right now is self-love and confidence is the most important thing. And confidence develops over time, but most people, we don't truly love ourselves. We don't. We pick at ourselves, we're too busy, we blame, we have all this shame. Oh, I did this, now it means I'm a bad person. Right. So I want you to start noticing the patterns and the tapes that are playing on a daily basis. And what if you just surrendered those? And what if you just, because you would never, the way we talk to ourselves, that's on autopilot all the time, we would never talk to our child that way. Would you ever talk to your child, your son or your daughter, whoever that came to you and is like, oh, I'm having trouble with this? Would you be like, oh, you're so stupid, you're not worthy, whatever it is? You would never say that. But yet we have these tapes running all day long. So the first thing I would have you say is start being aware of what is the program running, because I'm going to guarantee there's so many people that don't even realize the negativity is running all the time. Because when I had that realization, I think I was in junior high and I was like, oh, I don't have to be like this all the time to myself. And I was like, oh, I just was automatically just mean to myself all the time. And then it was so natural to me, I'll be honest, that I didn't even know I was doing it. So that's the first thing, is to start being aware and then have compassion for yourself. Don't beat yourself up. I didn't blame myself. I was just like, oh, I didn't even realize I was doing this. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to be mean to myself, because I would never be mean to my child, right? So if we start treating ourselves like the inner child that we are and our child that we have, that's going to start shifting our vibration. And once we start shifting our vibration, we start opening up, and then the process happens. So the key thing here is don't look for fireworks, subtle things throughout time that are going to shift, and you're going to start feeling better. And this is what I teach. This is why I have my membership, so that we're here. I say, come do life with me. I'm going to keep reminding you constantly. We're going to do moon circles once a month. I'm going to give you meditations. We're going to do Q&As. I'm going to help you clear the density and remind you in our private app of you're amazing. You're on purpose. You're aligned. Let's clear this, right? Look at this, see from a higher perspective, and keep going. So that's what it is. It's like the mama bear that like we didn't have, right? So we have to tap into our inner mama bear for ourselves.
It's a wonderful thing that you touched upon such a very important topic when we don't have a lot of time. But thank you for saying that nevertheless, because it is a wonderful message. And since you mentioned that you do work with people in groups now, more than one-on-one, could you maybe clarify how can people work with you more, go deeper down this path? Yeah.
Yes,
and Bianca, you could share the links while Danielle is answering this question.
Yeah, thank you. Because when I posted the link, I posted it privately by accident. So
yes,
nobody saw it. So right now I have a membership. I just opened it and it actually closed, but I left it open for everyone on this podcast that's listening. The link is in my bio. So it's called Cosmic Body Collective. And I created a membership because what I learned in my 14 years on this journey, sure, courses are great. And we absolutely need courses, and we need lectures, and we need programs and coaches. But what are we doing every single day? What are we doing every single day to be intentional with our life? So I created this program, and we have our own app. I give you downloads. I get downloads all day long of stuff from Spirit. So I'm encouraging you. I'm motivating you. I'm sharing higher awareness. You have moon circles that we do. I've been doing these for 9 years. We go in, talk about around the full moon, have a talk about the astrology. And then we also do clearing work. So we unzip you and we clear you. And then there's a bunch of other stuff in the program. And the biggest thing with this is I wanted to make it affordable, because I know that I'm here for the masses. I understand everyone has a different financial situation, and I did not want to make it where only people that were millionaires can join, right? So I made it $35 a month for everything. And that was actually the same price as my moon circles before. So now I just added the moon circles and gave you a bunch of other stuff. So I made it realistic because I don't want anybody to have a reason why they can't shift and change. And it's what you do every single day that's going to set the foundation for the rest of your life. So I encourage you to check it out. I left it open for you guys, even though the cart closed, I left it open for you guys to check it out. It's Cosmic Body Collective, or the link in my bio on Instagram. And please be mindful on Instagram. There's a lot of fake accounts of me. I will never DM you and ask you for a reading. It's not me, I have to say, because there's a lot of fake accounts. So I'm not going to offer you a reading. So that's not me. So just
I believe that the one which I researched before this interview was real. I hope so. It looked like this.
Get that check mark, so.
Danielle, thank you so much for the wonderful conversation. For those who are going to be watching this interview later, either on Mind Valley membership or later maybe on my social media, we'll leave the links as well in the description. I want to ask my traditional question. Those who are here with us, please leave a heart for my wonderful guests in the chat. And if you're watching it later in recording, then leave them in the comments below. I think it does really matter to share love. It's important. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you those of you who joined me in this conversation and asked the questions. Actually, it was so many today. I'm excited about it. I hope you guys stay as active. And Danielle, thank you once again for finding time to chat with us and for sharing your wisdom with this group.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate being here.
And yes, I have to also say the traditional thank you to Bianca for having our backs. And I'll see you guys all next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.